It has to have bite-sized training, live training, a coaching component, really bring it together so that every piece from profile to prospecting to engaging on content really becomes new behavior learning, not just I learned it.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. I am so excited to have you on my show today. The great, the wonderful Brynne Tillman, Chief Learning Officer of Vengreso. Welcome to Selling with Social, Brynne.
Oh, Mario, I'm so excited to be here. I know that I did this a long time ago with you, but it's been a while, so I'm thrilled to be back.
Well, actually, the funny part is we actually recorded a podcast with you last year, and that was pre-Vengreso announcement.
Oh, so my first Vengreso appearance.
This is your first appearance on Selling with Social as the Chief Learning Officer of Vengreso, and I'm very excited to have you with us. We're going to have some great fun today, and we're going to be talking about a very important topic for sales leaders, and it's all around digital selling. And I think you've got this 10-step program to launching a digital selling program. So for those of you listening in right now, we're going to be going through the 10 steps that you want to be listening to, or at least a few of those steps. How about that? I don't know which one we're going to go with, but I'm going to let Brynne control this. But Brynne, before we get started here, what I want to know from you is tell us something that nobody would know if they were to look at your social profiles about you.
So there's two things. The first,
Ooh, we got two things. Okay.
Yeah. So the very first one, which I think is fun, is I was actually a professional comedian in college.
That explains it all.
Right? Yeah. I mean, my dream was to write for Saturday Night Live.
And did it ever happen?
No, but I get to write for the Vengreso team, and that's close.
You get to bring comedic value to us. I expect a lot of jokes throughout this podcast.
I'm not prepared. I should be writing. No, it'll be fun. And the second thing is I'm a little over 11-year survivor of cancer when I was given 6 months to live, and I'm here today. So that's kind of a cool thing. And although you said that's not on your profile, you encouraged me, I don't know if you remember this, Mario, but to write my memoir. And probably almost 2 years ago, maybe a little less than that, I did that. So if you look deep into my content, that one is there.
I do remember that story. And I remember that you wrote, I forget what the title was, but the title was so catchy. I think it was a pretty top performer for you. And if I'm not mistaken, I think some people thought that you were actually dying.
I know. I felt a little guilty, but you said it was good for marketing.
It was great for marketing. No, but actually, honestly, the story that you've got, and we'll try to find that story and bring it into the show link. I do remember that, and I do remember you talking about that. And there's a lot of folks that are out there that have a very similar story as yourself, and they're given certain time frames. And that's a really tough conversation, basically, to have with anyone, quite frankly. And the fact that you're 11 years and given 6 months, I love it. And I'm so glad that you're with us. And I'm so glad that you're part of our Vengreso team. And for those of you that don't know, we'll put it into the show notes. We'll find that article. It's a fantastic article that talking about the will and the desire and the mindset of living.
Well, that's it. And it's of living. Now, we don't know if we have a day or a week or a month. None of us know, right? Yeah. And it really did change everything, both personally and professionally for me. And I knew two things. One, I wanted to do what I'm good at, I love, and can monetize. I really wanted to make an impact for sure. And I also knew, even personally, that I had to transform everything that I was doing to really bring positive, happy, good, because we don't know how long. So stop complaining, really work on the positives. And I think it makes such a difference. And I don't know that I would have been the person I am today had I not gone through that.
That story, I remember when I read it for the first time, I was in tears.
Aww.
I was bawling. And I get all teary-eyed right now just even thinking about it, because it's not a conversation that you ever want to have. And some of the things that we hear about so much on the news today, and the unfortunate mishaps and crazy things that are happening around the world. But when you hear of someone's story of being a survivor, it really actually, for those of you that don't know Brynne, that are listening in for the first time, it really bodes well to who you are as an individual, right? A fighter and a lover and a passionate individual. And when you sink your teeth into something like, I don't know, digital selling.
Yeah, I don't let go. I'm a pit bull.
Exactly. You're in it, and I know it, and I love it, and that's why you're part of the Vengreso team, because you bring just a strong grit. So, I want to spend some time talking today. There's this thing called digital selling, if you would, right? I mean, we talk about digital selling, we talk about social selling. Do me a favor, Brynne. A lot of people are confused by the word social selling and the word digital selling. And I like to describe it as social selling is a component of digital, right? But I want to hear your definition as the Chief Learning Officer of the Digital Sales Transformation Company for Vengreso. Tell everybody, what is the difference between digital and social?
There's definitely, as you mentioned, social is a component. So when I started, it was LinkedIn training, right? Which is one component. And then it was LinkedIn training and Sales Navigator, right? Which is a little different. And then it was social selling. So we brought in a little bit of Twitter and and the key with social selling is they were using social platforms to engage. Digital sales, and we talk about digital sales transformation, is looking at all of the tools and the applications, not just social platforms that you're engaging on, but how are we bringing in content as lead generation from your website, which is digital, right? How are we bringing in video, which is engaging? Podcasts, right? What are the other digital sales components that help the seller move the buyer through their journey outside of the social platform? In addition, I should not say outside of, but in addition to the social platforms, what are the tools and the technology and the skills, the strategies and the tactics that you can use outside of just LinkedIn and Twitter that all salespeople should be embracing in order to engage the buyer where they need to be engaged?
Yeah. So like an example, as you mentioned, video, well, I don't know if you mentioned this, but artificial intelligence using like the outsourced AI SDR bot, right? And digitally engaging with your buyers on your behalf. Texting, is that digital as well?
I guess if you have text campaigns, which we haven't played much in, it's probably something to talk about.
We will be soon.
Okay, there you go. Like I respond, if I'm speaking with a client and they have a question, I actually say, if you want me to respond quickly, text me.
Yeah.
Because my email's back up. And I do get to LinkedIn a couple of times, a day, but if you need me, and if you send me an email and you need me to respond to it now, text me and tell me you sent me an email and I'll go find it.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people that really engage. I mean, we know we are all looking at our smartphone 85 times a day. 85 times a day. So texting is a great way to engage a buyer, especially if that's their preference.
And then, of course, digital networking through groups or events. Email is even a digital format, right? So I like to think of it as anything that's not the phone, or I put traditional selling into emailing and networking or knocking on the door. Yeah, like, oh my God, I remember those days.
I do too. I could tell you all the campaigns I walked.
Yeah. I love it. So the point though, before we get into really how to launch a digital selling program, which you've done this before at many companies, both large and small, what is the goal of digital selling? Is it to grow the sales pipeline? Is it to talk to more people, have more phone calls, more conversations? What is the goal?
So I think the overarching goal is to get on more conversations with interested and qualified buyers. So a lot of people will ask me, so if we hire you, Brynne, what's your ROI? Where do we prove that it was successful? Is it more clients? And I laugh a little and I say, we can't control your sales process, how you overcome objections, what your negotiation skills are. What we do is we help you attract, teach, and engage the buyers and get them interested to take a phone call. But I'm going to also tell you, when I speak with sales folks, they'll say that's their number one challenge.
Yeah.
Get me on the phone with them, I'm good. Right?
Yeah.
That's what you hear all the time. And the number one challenge is that phone call. So when you really look at measuring success with digital sales and social selling, it really comes down to, are you on more conversations with the right buyers? If you are, and you're not selling more business, I've got lots of sales trainers to refer you to. This is what we do up here without the 80 cold calls a day.
I love it. And this can be used for people who are account managers too, right? I mean, we're not people who are not farming accounts or hybrid type of account managers, not just prospecting, it's building relationships and creating more conversations through a digital touch point, correct?
100%. I would say a significant portion of our clients are land and expand, right?
Yeah.
They get one department, they get a pilot. Now we want to get in and sell wider. So account managers, client success managers absolutely can leverage this in a lot of ways. One of them is just simply research, identifying who else inside of that organization is an influencer, a buyer, a stakeholder, and leverage your champion internally, the person that maybe you did that pilot with, or the person that loves you and loves your product, to get warm introductions. Because if you say to we call them lots of things, champions, mobilizers, coaches, but your internal advocate, if you say to your internal advocate, who else in your organization should I be talking to? They typically don't know, or maybe they know one or two. By leveraging social, by leveraging LinkedIn specifically, but there are lots of other ways to do this, you can start to identify who the other people are that you want to speak, and now bring that list to your champion. It's so much easier to get introductions when you're handing them a list of who the people that you want to know. The other thing is socially surrounding those people, connecting with them, sharing really valuable content, letting them know the successes that's happening in this corner of their business socially, and get them to raise their hand and say, you know what, we should chat.
Yeah, that's a great. I'll tell you something. This just happened to me. I got on a call 2 days ago, and the gal who reached out to me said, "Oh, so-and-so actually asked me to reach out to you, and he's the chief commercial officer of this particular company." And I was like, "Oh, I know him." I was like, "Yeah, I've been connected for a while." So I went back and I researched his profile. Get this, we connected back in 2015.
Wow.
All right. Last conversation that we had that was a digital touch point was in 2016. Requested to meet with him. He said he would. We never got the meeting. He stayed in my network, wasn't really ready to buy. Well, he asked his consultant to reach out to me to set up a meeting and a discussion so that they could launch a particular program around digital selling. It's been 2 years.
Yeah, I have a ton of stories like that. We're nurturing people we don't even know we're nurturing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's some power behind this. And we can spend all day long talking about why digital selling and why leaders need to be looking at this. But at the end of the day, the reality is the cold call isn't dead, but I would argue that it's dying. It's becoming extremely less effective, right? And so leaders need to be thinking about this program. But oftentimes leaders say, "Oh, my people are using LinkedIn." And I don't think they realize that just quote unquote researching or going to LinkedIn to look up somebody is actually not social selling and certainly not digital selling. And so what I want to spend some time talking about is we've defined and mapped out 10 steps to a digital selling program. And I think leaders need to listen into this so they can understand, like, okay, I can't just hire the fly-by-night solo individual who's going to come in and do a quote unquote LinkedIn workshop for a half a day and then have all my people be trained. In fact, this is an interesting story. It just happened this week as well. An individual reached out to me and said, "Hey, we wanted to have a LinkedIn training and we're going to allocate 4 hours." And I said, "What do you want out of the results of this?" We want to be able to have more conversations. Fantastic. And then I said, "Well, what are you going to do about it afterwards?" And they were like, "Well, hopefully you'll be able to give us some training and we'll be able to execute on that." And I said, "Save your money. Save your $10,000. She's like, "What? You're the first person to tell me that." Save your $10,000. You're going to waste your money. Why? Because what you need to do is you need to understand and go through this process to understand how to change behavior, which is going to impact results. So let's talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. You've defined for Vengreso our 10 steps to digital selling. Go through the 10 steps. Now, we don't have, of course, a whole hour here. We've got, just another 20 to 30 more minutes. Mm-hmm. So what I want to do is I want to just touch on those 10 steps and then talk a little bit about each step as we go through it. And I'll ask you some questions. So what's our step number one? First step to a digital selling program.
Establish your KPIs and define the outcome you want from the program is absolutely step number one. Don't do anything until you've got that down. Do
you mean like define what success might look like?
That's a good way to put it, what success might look like. But I want it more granular than that, because success, some people may answer, what does success look like? Oh, we double our sales. When I talk about KPIs, I want to know there's really two goals. There's activity goals and results goals. So when you say define what success looks like, usually that's a result goal. This is what we want to get out of it. The activity goal piece is, what do we need to do to get to that result goal? How many new connections do we need to make? How many net new conversations do we have to make in a day, in a week, in a month? Times how many reps do we have? And really, sometimes that starts with backing it out. Here's what's happening now that gets us to this goal, and what do we need to do to double that goal, or whatever that looks like. But so establishing KPIs that are measurable, key performance indicators that we can go back, that we can control from an activity standpoint to say, we are doing this and we are or we're not meeting our goal. And I'm actually jumping into one near the end, which is measure those results. But you can't measure them without having really established KPIs.
And most leaders probably think through this and say, well, that's pretty easy to do. We can establish our goals. But I think the challenge is how do you measure KPIs on social activity? And I think those are the things where we could help, certainly, right? On what those things are that you can quantify for an individual. Is that right?
That will drive results. Ultimately, and I think everyone is guilty of this in some degree, is that we're out there doing random acts of social.
Yeah. Good point.
I can't tell you how many people I talk to that say, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. What are you doing? Well, I connect, I comment, and it's random. And then they'll say, it's really not working for me. No matter what sales function whether you're cold calling or knocking on doors or emailing, you can't build a plan without KPIs. KPIs are really, in my opinion, the foundation, particularly for sales teams and larger sales organizations. You can't measure whether or not something is successful if we don't have the core to measure.
I wrote down step number one, define desired outcome and your KPIs.
Perfect.
Step number two,
buyer mapping and identification. So buyer mapping is often very similar to identifying filters on wherever you're going to be finding them. I tend to gravitate toward LinkedIn and or Twitter. So what are the filters that help us find our persona? And, we know from Gartner CEB that there are approximately 6.8 decision makers on every sale that are involved. So we need to start really mapping that out, org charting it. Who are all the people, who's our economic buyer, who's our end users, who are the people that are going to have the conversations when they sit around the table to make a decision on, what direction they're going to move in. And we've got to make sure that we are mapping out all of those titles. And there may be 30 titles, but in each company, there's 6 or 7 or 8 that you're finding. So you want to map those out. Sometimes if you're using Sales Navigator and you use the advanced searches, you can put the titles in. But we like to use Boolean searches a lot, or search strings. In one paste, we can now find everyone inside of a specific organization that we want to engage with.
Do you mean that today most reps are out there doing filtering, and most managers probably don't even know this, but you can actually create a search string that has everything categorized, maybe by title, by industry, by segment, by company size, and then you can actually take that search string and replicate it across an organization?
So I would typically, you can certainly do that. It's a little more difficult adding industry and location. I typically will go with primarily titles, occasionally keywords, and it's done in a mathematical equation. We can put a link to one of our how to create a Boolean search with this, because I think that could be quite valuable.
Good idea.
And then we take that search string and then we add the other filters that LinkedIn allows.
Got it.
Location and industry and other things. Now, you can actually build out a search string with all of those, but there's no need.
Gotcha. Okay. So that makes sense. So this is the value then in terms of really having a methodical approach to an implementation for a leader, is that we're going to help build those things so that we're not sitting there trying to train 400, 500, 1,000, 10,000 sales reps and having them all do it differently. Let's bring in a process together, right?
Yeah. And we can identify the 20 or 25 titles that are, we can look through our CRM and identify every title that's been put in our CRM and add that to a search string.
Got it.
As far as a buyer and an influencer. So we're really getting a full picture when we're searching.
Let's talk about step number 3. So we've done the buyer identification and mapping. Step number 3 in a digital selling program. What is that?
This is absolutely foundational for any digital program. And this is the piece I'm going to just tell you right now, which got me most excited to join Vengreso. Because there is very little success in digital sales, social selling, LinkedIn without number 3, which is building content for the sales process. Right? So I wrote content for me, but I didn't write content for my clients. And I would say you need content. And then they'd get content, but it was often marketing related. Features, products.
Yeah.
Right? Why us kind of content.
Yeah.
And what I knew they needed, because it's what was working for me, is education and insights and content that moves your buyer closer and closer to your solution. Content that when they are looking for a solution, it's your stuff that's educating them, that's influencing that buying decision. And so step number 3 is content specifically to help your reps, I guess, engage your buyers. You talk a lot, it's the bait on the hook, right? It's what draws them in.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest mistake that any company can make is rolling out a digital plan without a content for sales strategy.
You hit the nail on the head. You can teach people how to fish all day long, but if you're not giving them the bait to bait their hook, what good is it, right? Save your money, save your $100,000, $10,000, whatever it is, right?
Right.
It doesn't make sense if you don't have that strategy in place. But now it's not just is it just the strategy that you need to make sure that you've got the right content, that you're working with the marketing team to make sure you've got that? Or is there also a component of, the distribution of that content as well? Like how you're going to distribute that?
And we actually work that into our playbook. So I'm kind of skipping on to the next one, which is like in 2 steps. So
go ahead.
Well, okay. So the next one is choose your tool. So let's start with the tool that can help you with distribution. So choose your tools. There's a lot. There's productivity tools like calendar, syncing apps, auto text expander that we use, like Grammarly, lots of productivity tools. There's also things like Conversica that, other tools, your CRM that you're choosing. But the one I think that leads back to the last point is an advocacy tool, an employee advocacy tool that works in many ways as we make it easy for the sales reps to find and share the right content that marketing and or leadership has determined appropriate and engaging. So an employee advocacy tool, we partner with a couple like Everyone Social and Gagalamp, but there's a ton out there where it becomes a library that makes it really simple, not only for the reps to engage, but for leadership to look at what content is working, what content is getting engagement. I was shocked at some of the stuff that I thought would be awesome wasn't, because I thought it was going to be awesome. And stuff I was surprised that people loved. They loved it, and I would never have pushed something like that.
Yeah.
So the advocacy tool also teaches you what's working and what isn't working. And it reports, and it's got gamification and leaderboard stuff, which always encourages good rep behavior and that kind of thing.
Is this the point as well in time where you would choose, do I use LinkedIn free versus LinkedIn Sales Navigator as well?
Right. So that's the other one for sure. And there's really LinkedIn free, LinkedIn premium, LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yeah.
I actually think premium is no longer on the table when I talk with folks. There's 2 things you get from premium that you don't get in the free, which is who's viewed your profile in the last 90 days, and a few more searches. Other than that, I actually think for an extra $20, because I think that's $59 a month, for an extra $20, you got to move to Sales Navigator.
Can you do social selling though without LinkedIn Sales Navigator?
Sure, absolutely. Now, and it depends on how you're doing that. When it comes to content and engaging with content and connecting and getting warm introductions, all that's available in the free. What you really can't do is have someone who is reaching out and connecting with 20 or 30 people a day as part of their cadence. That won't work. But if you're doing warm market, where you're looking for introductions from your clients and your centers of influence specifically, absolutely. And content has nothing to do with Sales Navigator at all.
Right. It's purely a prospecting tool or for
Outreach.
Sales Navigator. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, outreach and keeping in touch with.
True. Yeah, good point. All right. So we've got through step number 4. My gosh, it seems like a lot of work, but so far, right? But this is a very good process that you're taking leaders through in terms of what they need to do. Step number 5, what is that?
This is really what brings everything together. And it's developing a sales playbook. Now, there's 2 kinds of playbooks. Step 6, we'll talk about profile. So we're going to put that on the table for a moment. This is taking our KPIs, what we're looking for, and identifying what activities are going to align with those KPIs. What messaging are we going to use? What is the daily cadence? And what is the process that we expect our reps to go through? Now, I'm just going to jump in as an example from a Sales Navigator process for a moment. Maybe we sit down and we decide, and we use tags as categories to move people through the pipeline. Maybe I'm going to make this up because every client is different when we go in and we customize this. It depends on their KPIs, what they're looking to achieve. But let's say step number 1 is engage with content they've shared. This is like kind of how are we warming up a cold prospect? So I now tag it as engaged. Now we can do that in Sales Navigator because one of the filters are people that are active in the last 90 days, and most of them have content to engage on because that's how LinkedIn is determining that they are active. Now, if they share, a Snoopy photo, it may not be, it's still, LinkedIn's going to still say they're engaged, even if it's not appropriate. So we can start with that. That's number 1. Number 2, maybe it's I followed them, which you can only do in Mother LinkedIn. You can't in the mothership, linkedin.com, but I will record it in Sales Navigator as now I've touched them 2 times.
Yeah.
And really 3 times because I viewed their profile. Now the next one might be a connection request or an introduction request, or it just depends on what you want to do. So anyway, so moving them through, you've got to take that and create a playbook so that you can scale that process across your organization. And so step number 5 is really putting together a custom playbook. Now, big warning, a generic playbook is okay, but it won't scale. A generic messaging is a good place to start and get you thinking about what's going to work. But I spent a lot of years with generic playbooks, and the adoption was significantly lower to the customization that we provide. So whether it's us or anyone or your team, even if internally you're doing this, make sure that your playbook is so customized that you can hand it to any rep with a little bit of training and they don't have to think. Mm-hmm. They don't have to create. Now, that being said, we encourage personalization, but we want to make it as easy as possible. Because if they have to think too hard how to write a template, it won't happen. So the customization playbook is important.
Which leads you into step number 6 about if they have to think about doing something else, it won't happen. What is step number 6?
That's creating a buyer-centric profile for all of your reps. One of the things which I stole from you, Mario, and I used it probably 5 times since I heard you say it yesterday.
Awesome. I like it. It.
Which is you've got all of these micro sites out there that could be branding you, but are not. I'm talking with a company that's 18,000 people on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Right? And Bernie and I are actually talking on Monday. And as Bernie and I sat down to say, how are we positioning this? Because they want to be seen as the thought leader, is you have one website, but you have 18,000 microsites that you can leverage, right? So what does leveraging a microsite, a LinkedIn profile is what we're calling the microsite, mean? Well, it means that it's attracting, teaching, and engaging your buyer and getting them interested in learning more about how you might be able to solve their problem, period. The goal is to attract, teach, and engage. So it's foundational that the profiles are really expressing the value that your company brings in order for that playbook to work, right? So we can do all the activities in the world. We can get warm introductions from clients. We can get referrals in from our strategic alliances. And then they pop to our profile and there's no picture, or worse yet, there's a picture with, at Disney World, right? Like with Mickey behind your head, right? Or a wedding cutout, or, some strange pose that's off-putting. And then they see that you're in sales because it's director of sales, regional sales. Well, that person's going to say they want to connect with me because they want to.
Wait, I have one. Yesterday, one of our new clients that we're redoing all of their LinkedIn profiles for and having a customized profile playbook. One of the reps came back and said, I've done it. I don't want to change my summary. My summary is what I like. It's very personalized to me. And I don't see how mapping it to the buyer's journey would be of value. And all I did is I cut and pasted one phrase. And inside there, it had experience contract negotiator.
I love it. If I'm a buyer, that is the last person I want to have a conversation with.
Exactly. I want the newbie. Give me the new guy. I want the new guy fresh out of college, right?
Going to be fair, not going to gouge me because he's such a great contract negotiator. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I sent that back to him and said, here's one question. Would you want to buy from you if you're an experienced contract negotiator? And he wrote back, touche, I get it, right? So that's changing that from, I think what you talk about is changing it from a resume to a resource page to help the buyers on that journey, right? But the difference here is there's a lot of companies out there that actually train on how to redo their profiles.
Yeah, so originally I did that. I would train a company and I would leave with them hugging me, telling me how amazing that training was. It was phenomenal. It's going to change our world. And then a month later, I'd go back and like, oh, well, yeah, we didn't have time to change that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. Now, even before Vengreso, I started to bring in profiles and customization. But for 2 years, it astounded me that they'd pay, $10,000 for me to come in and train and then not do the work.
Yeah. So what's the difference here? Is it training sales reps? Are we delivering an actual full LinkedIn profile to them?
So whether we're doing this or the marketing team is developing it or whomever it is, don't go and train the sales reps without giving them guided templates that they could copy and paste and then fill in the blank to make it a little personal and connection. So we do that. I'm saying, but if you have a marketing team that can put all of that together, that's fine too. But don't offer social selling or digital sales training without giving them the tools. Even if we teach them, okay, your headline, make sure you show the value, who you help and how you help them. And in the moment, they're like, that's awesome. I love that. But they don't go back and change it. So you've got to be able to provide them with 2 or 3 or 4 headline options that meet the criteria that's going to attract, teach, and engage the buyer and allow them to customize or personalize the headline, the summary, the job description, but get them started 90% of the way even.
Yeah, you hit the easy button, give them a playbook that has all the details. They can copy and paste and customize the areas. So we've got a few more minutes here and we've got steps 7 through 10 to go through, but we haven't even gotten to training, right? This is the funny part of the conversation. Everything you've talked about, no mention of word of training yet.
Sales reps don't even know we're in the picture yet.
There's all this is going on in the background to help get them prepped and ready to go with a methodical approach to actually engaging digital selling that produces more conversations with more qualified buyers. So step number 7 leads us to what?
Now, step number 7 is digital sales training. This is when we bring all of the first steps together and present it in a way that reps can absolutely leverage in the moment. It's not training it and having them go figure it out. So any training that you have needs to be, first up, workshop oriented. So they learn it, they do it, they test it, they learn something new, they do it, they test it, they come back with questions, whether it's in person, live in a classroom setting, even if it's online training, it has to have bite-sized training, live training, a coaching component, really bring it together so that every piece from profile to prospecting to engaging on content really becomes new behavior learning, not just I learned it, but I'm learning it, I'm implementing it, and I'm seeing results in real time. So we did a class last week. 3 people got an introduction during the class, right? You think that that's something they're going to do more of because it worked. Now, if we just taught them how to do that, first of all, rarely are they ever going to go back and do it on their own after a class. But when they see this was easy, much easier than a cold call, it was easy, productive, and I got results in a workshop. Imagine if I just do this 5 times a day.
Yeah, gotcha. I love it. So now that goes into the training part. And how do you drive adoption? Is there an adoption component to this?
Yeah, adoption is a big thing, and there's lots of ways to do that. You can do it through gamification. You can do it through recognition. And you need to do this through whenever you meet with the reps to go over if you call it debrief, your one-on-ones with the reps, you've got to bring in your KPIs into that conversation. And remember, these KPIs are all supported by all the other things that we did train them. We've got to bring in those KPIs to determine, and I think I'm skipping ahead because it's drive through gamification and recognition. We're going to combine 8 and 9. This gamification, recognition, have leaderboards, and also through recognition, make sure that you're measuring the activity that they're doing through KPIs. So those are 2 steps in one, kind of like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Step number 8, drive adoption via gamification recognition. And do we can help with identifying different games and programs to cash compensation, leaderboards, KPI reinforcement. All those things will drive KPI enforcement. That's step number 8. But then I heard you say step number 9 is measure and adapt for improvement. And that, maybe it's the messaging that may not be working. But at what point are we coaching the reps?
We call that step number 10, but coaching really starts at the training. You have it throughout the training, post-training, but we have it because coaching really now becomes part of the rep behavior change ongoing. And coaching happens in a couple of places. It happens in your one-on-ones or your debriefs with your people. Coaching should happen with leadership to help them make sure that they're coaching their people in the right way. And you can have outside coaches that are coming in to help with tactical things and strategic things. I'm going to pull back. There's really 2 kinds of coaching. There's coaching to KPIs and there's coaching to strategy. And it takes both the leadership and a digital sales coach to bring both of those together.
Yeah, I love it. So 10 steps in review for a digital selling program. Step number 1, you said define desired outcome and KPIs.
Yep.
Step number 2 is do the buyer identification and mapping.
Yep.
Which helps you to develop all the appropriate search strings that you need. Mm-hmm. Step number 3 is make sure you've got the sales content being created that maps to the awareness phase, to the consideration phase, purchasing phase, and that you are developing a plan for distribution, which leads us into step number 4, which is choose your digital tools,
right? Whether
it be LinkedIn versus Navigator, employee advocacy versus free content sharing tools, productivity tools like Calendly, synchronization of your calendars and those types of things. Mm-hmm. You said step number 5 is develop customized playbooks, which includes things like customized messages with customized company content that adds value to the engagement. Yep. That allows you to have a scalable, repeatable cadence, if you would. Yep. Step number 6 is don't train your sales reps on how to redo their profile because guess what? Nobody will ever do it. Give them the playbook that says, here's how you copy and paste all the way from your headline down to your publications and project sections and skills and endorsements and recommendations. Mm-hmm. That helps them create a resume and turn it into a resource, helps them go from resume to resource on their digital profile. Mm-hmm. I think step number 7, you said, is then you start the training, the digital sales training program, right? Instructor-led classroom, on demand, live guided virtual trainings. And I'm not mistaken, because you've done all this other pre-work, now this training becomes, instead of generic, it becomes very customized and specific and unique to them, right?
Which really drives the ROI, really drives more conversations, because we've eliminated all the random acts of social.
I love it. And step number 8, drive adoption via gamification recognition. Number 9, measure and adapt for improvement. And number 10 is make sure that you are coaching. Did we get all those steps right?
Amazing. Yes, we did.
Whew, I'm writing all these things down. All right. So net is digital selling and social selling is not just this thing that you can just do and learn, quote unquote, LinkedIn, but there's a whole process and methodology to be able to create more conversations with more qualified buyers.
You got it. 100%.
Brynne, 2 questions. If someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they reach out to you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Twitter? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to actually say go to 15withbrynne.com if you want to have a conversation. And I'm happy to talk to any sales leader about what they're doing. Even if we never work together, I'm happy to provide some insights to help. Obviously, LinkedIn. Currently, I'm the only Brynne Tillman on LinkedIn, BRYNNE, Tillman, TILLMAN. And I am on Twitter, also at Brynne Tillman. So thanks.
And last question I have for you is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
So it's a personal movie. It's called Blood Brother. It's a story about an AIDS orphanage in India. It's not a story, it's a documentary. And friends of mine actually produced it through their church. And this gentleman, Rocky, went down to meet these folks and ended up living there and running this orphanage and married there. And it's an amazing documentary of these children. It's called Blood Brothers. A Sundance movie of the year a few years back. And so I'd love everybody to see it. It's amazing.
I love it. Fantastic. We'll add that to the show notes here. Brynne Tillman, Chief Learning Officer of Vengreso. Fabulous insights today on developing a 10-step program to digital selling. Thank you for joining me on Selling with Social. Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.